take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Tonight, we're going on a journey together. A journey through one of the most mysterious and misunderstood stories ever told. You don't need to do anything but listen. Let your body relax. Let your mind settle. Because the story you're about to hear is one that has been whispered across centuries, passed down through ancient texts, and feared by the mightiest beings in all creation. This is the story of an angel, but not the kind you might imagine. This angel doesn't bring messages of joy. He doesn't fight in heavenly battles. He doesn't announce births or protect wanderers. This angel has only one purpose, and that purpose is something every living being will one day experience. He is called Azrael, and even Michael, the greatest warrior of heaven, steps aside when he arrives. Even Lucifer, the morning star who challenged God himself, knew better than to stand in his way. Why? Because Azrael doesn't come with warnings. He doesn't come with second chances. When Azrael appears, the story ends. Your story, my story, everyone's story. He is the angel of death. But here's what most people don't know. Azrael didn't start as death's master. He wasn't created to be feared. In fact, his name means help of God in the ancient Hebrew language. So how did an angel meant to help become the one being that every soul, human and angel alike, learned to fear? That's what we're going to explore tonight. And I promise you, by the end of this journey, you'll see death, life, and even fear itself in a completely different way. So settle in, get comfortable, close your eyes if you'd like. And let me take you back to the very beginning, to a time before death existed at all. Before we go any further, if you enjoy deep dives into ancient mysteries and untold stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We explore the hidden corners of history, faith, and the unknown. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Chapter 2. Before death existed. Imagine a world where nothing ever ended. No sunsets, no final breaths, no last words, no goodbyes. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Like paradise. But that world wasn't paradise. Not yet. Because paradise requires something we often forget. It requires the possibility of loss. Without endings, there can be no meaning. Without death, there is no life. In the very beginning, before humans walked the earth, before mountains rose and oceans filled, there was only the heavens. And in those heavens, there were angels, thousands upon thousands of them. Some were small, some were vast beyond imagining. Each had a role. Some sang praises without stopping. Some recorded every event. Some guarded sacred places. And some, like Michael and Gabriel, were given special tasks of protection and communication. But none of them knew what death was. Death didn't exist yet. It hadn't been created. It wasn't part of the design. And then, everything changed. God decided to create something new, something different from the angels, something made not from light or fire, but from the earth itself. He would create humans. The first human would be called Adam, and Adam would be formed from dust, from soil, from the very ground beneath our feet. But here's the problem. To create Adam, Someone had to go down to Earth and collect that dust. And the Earth didn't want to give it up. So God gave a command. He called upon his greatest angels, one by one, and told them, "Go to the Earth. Bring me the dust I need." First, he sent Michael. Michael, the warrior, the leader of heaven's armies. Strong, brave, loyal. Michael descended to the earth, his wings blazing with holy fire. He reached down toward the soil, and the earth cried out. "Please," the earth begged, "don't take from me. If you take this dust, you will create something that will wound me, walk upon me, and tear me apart. Please, leave me whole." Michael heard the earth's plea, and he couldn't do it. He returned to heaven empty-handed. So God sent Gabriel, the messenger, the bringer of truths. Gentle, wise, compassionate. Gabriel came down and knelt beside the soil. He listened to the earth's voice, felt its sorrow, and he too returned without the dust. One by one, the archangels were sent, and one by one, they came back with nothing. They couldn't bring themselves to take what the earth didn't want to give. But then, God called on someone else, someone who hadn't been tested yet, someone whose name most people didn't even know. Azrael. At that time, Azrael was just another angel, not a warrior, not a messenger, just faithful, just obedient. And when God gave him the command, Azrael went. He descended to earth, silent and calm. The earth cried out to him just as it had to the others. It begged, it pleaded, it offered reasons, emotions, prayers. But Azrael didn't stop. Some stories say he whispered a promise to the earth. "What I take, I will return, every piece, in time." Others say he said nothing at all. What matters is this: Azrael gathered the dust. He filled his hands with it, and he carried it back to heaven. He did what no other angel could do, and in that moment, everything changed. Because God saw something in Azrael that the others didn't have. Not courage, not coldness, but the ability to do what was necessary, even when it hurt, even when it felt wrong. And so, God gave Azrael a new role. "You collected the dust that began life," God said. "Now you will be the one to end it. You will take the soul from the body when its time is finished. You will be the angel of death." From that moment on, Azrael was no longer just an angel. He became something else, something necessary, something feared. But here's the question no one asks. Did Azrael want this role? Did he understand what it would mean? Did he know that from that day forward, he would be the one every living being would dread? We'll never know. Because Azrael, unlike other angels, doesn't speak much in the ancient stories. He doesn't complain. He doesn't question. He simply obeys. And maybe that's the most terrifying part of all. If you're still listening, I want to ask you something. Do you think Azrael should have refused? Should he have left the earth alone like the others? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know how you see it. And if this story is pulling you in, hit that like button. It helps us share these deep, powerful stories with more people. Now, let's talk about what happened next. Because once Azrael became the angel of death, He needed something to keep track of every single life on Earth. He needed a scroll. Chapter 3. The test that changed everything. Let's pause for a moment and think about what just happened. Azrael passed a test that the greatest angels in heaven failed. Michael, the warrior who leads armies, couldn't do it. Gabriel, the voice of God, couldn't do it. Angels who had stood in the presence of the Almighty since the beginning of time couldn't do it. But Azrael could. Why? Some people say it's because Azrael was stronger. Others say he was colder, more willing to ignore emotion. But I think there's another reason. And it's one that makes Azrael far more interesting than just a figure of fear. Azrael understood something the others didn't. He understood that creation requires sacrifice, that beginnings come with endings, that life, real life, cannot exist without the possibility of death. The earth was afraid. It knew that once humans were made, they would change everything. They would dig, plant, build, and yes, sometimes destroy. The earth would be used, shaped, and marked by human hands. But Azrael also knew this. Without that dust, there would be no Adam, no humanity, no choice, no love, no art, no laughter, no tears. The earth would remain untouched, but it would also remain empty. So Azrael made a choice. He chose to begin the story, knowing that one day he would also have to end it. And maybe that's what made him different. He didn't see death as cruelty. He saw it as part of the design. Think about it. If nothing ever died, what would life even mean? Every moment would be the same. There would be no urgency, no beauty in a sunrise, no reason to hold someone close. We treasure things because they don't last forever. Azrael understood that, and because he understood it, he was willing to bear the weight of it. But here's where it gets even more interesting. After Azrael brought the dust back, God used it to form Adam's body. He shaped it with care, molded it with intention, and then God breathed life into that body. A soul entered the dust, and Adam opened his eyes. For the first time, a human being existed, and in that same moment, something else was created: death. Because once life began, death became necessary. You can't have one without the other. And so, the clock started ticking. Not just for Adam, but for every human who would ever be born. And Azrael? He became the keeper of that clock. From the moment Adam took his first breath, Azrael's duty began. He didn't take Adam's soul right away. No, Adam lived for centuries according to some traditions. But Azrael was always there, waiting, watching, aware. And this is where we arrive at one of the most fascinating parts of Azrael's story: the scroll. In Islamic tradition, it's said that Azrael carries a divine record, a scroll, or sometimes described as a great book, that contains the name of every person who has ever lived or ever will live. When someone is born, their name appears on the scroll. When they die, their name is erased. This scroll is not something Azrael controls. He doesn't choose whose name appears or disappears. God does. Azrael simply reads it. And when a name begins to fade, Azrael knows. It's time. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine being responsible for billions of lives. Imagine having a list in front of you, constantly shifting, names appearing and vanishing in real time, and knowing that you are the one who must act the moment a name begins to fade. That's not power, that's burden, and Azrael carries it without complaint. But here's a question that might keep you up at night. Does Azrael feel anything when he sees a name about to vanish? Does he hesitate, even for a second, when it's a child, a mother, someone who wasn't ready? The texts don't tell us. Azrael remains silent, and maybe that silence is what makes him so terrifying, because we don't know what he feels. We don't know if he feels at all. Or maybe, just maybe, he feels everything. Every loss, every goodbye, every soul that didn't want to leave. And he still does his duty. That, to me, is more powerful than any sword Michael could swing or any message Gabriel could deliver. So here's my question for you. Do you think Azrael is compassionate? Or do you think he's beyond emotion entirely? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time, because we're just getting started, and what comes next is going to blow your mind. Let's talk about what Azrael actually looks like, because trust me, it's not what you'd expect. Chapter 4: The Scroll of Every Name. Close your eyes again for a moment. Imagine you're holding a piece of paper. On that paper is a name, your name, and next to it is a date, the day you were born. But there's another date too, one you can't see yet, the day your name will be erased. That paper exists. And Azrael is holding it. This scroll, this divine record, is one of the most important details in understanding who Azrael is and how he works, because it shows us something crucial. Azrael is not a hunter. He's not searching for victims. He's not making decisions about who lives and who dies. He's a servant, following orders, reading a list. But the weight of that list is unimaginable. According to Islamic tradition, this scroll is always with Azrael. Some say it's a physical object, rolled up and glowing with light. Others say it's something he simply knows, written into his very being. Either way, the scroll is constantly changing. Every second, new names appear, babies are born, lives begin. At the exact same time, other names start to fade. And when a name goes dim, Azrael moves. He doesn't delay. He doesn't second guess. The moment the name fades, he's there. Think about what that means. Right now, as you're listening to this, Azrael is collecting souls. Not just one, dozens, hundreds, some say thousands every single moment, all over the world, in hospitals, homes, battlefields, quiet rooms, busy streets, everywhere. And he's doing it alone. Well, not entirely alone. Some traditions say that Azrael has helpers, lesser angels who work under his command. These beings assist with the process, especially during times of great death, like wars, plagues, or natural disasters. But the final responsibility, that's Azrael's, always. Now here's where it gets even more mysterious. The scroll doesn't just have names. According to some interpretations, it also holds details. The way a person will die, the place, the time, even the state of their soul. Which means Azrael knows, long before he arrives, exactly how the meeting will go. He knows if the person will resist, if they'll be afraid, if they'll welcome him. He knows if he'll need to be gentle or firm, if the soul will come easily or if it will cling desperately to the body. And yet, he still goes, every single time. Some scholars describe this scroll as being divided into sections, one section for the righteous, one for the sinners, and perhaps others in between. When Azrael reads a name from the section of the righteous, he prepares himself differently. He may come in person. He may take a softer form. He may even give the soul a moment to understand what's happening, to say goodbye in their heart. But when he reads a name from the other section, the one marked for judgment, his approach changes. He may send one of his helpers, or he may come himself, but in a form that reflects the weight of what that soul must now face. This is important, because it shows that Azrael is not mindless. He's not cold. He adapts. He responds. He meets each soul where they are. And that, in a strange way, is a kind of mercy. But let's go deeper. What if the scroll is more than just a list? What if it's a connection? Some mystical traditions suggest that Azrael doesn't just read names. He feels them. The scroll is tied to his essence. Every name on it is a thread connecting him to that life. When you were born, a thread formed, invisible, unbreakable, linking your soul to Azrael. You've been connected to him your entire life. You just didn't know it. And one day, that thread will pull tight, and Azrael will follow it to wherever you are, to whatever you're doing, and in that moment, your name will fade from the scroll. Does that scare you, or does it comfort you? Because here's the thing, if Azrael is connected to every life, then he's also a witness to every life. He sees the moments no one else sees, the kindness you showed when no one was watching, the tears you cried alone, the quiet strength you carried. Maybe, just maybe, Azrael knows you better than anyone. And when he finally comes, he's not a stranger. He's someone who's been with you all along. If that idea strikes you, go ahead and hit the like button and drop a comment telling me how you feel about being connected to Azrael your whole life. Does it change how you see him? Now, let's talk about what Azrael actually looks like, because this is where things get truly unbelievable. Chapter 5. The form beyond imagination. When you picture an angel, what do you see? Maybe a glowing figure with white wings, a beautiful face, a calm expression, maybe holding a harp or standing on a cloud. That's not Azrael, not even close. In fact, if you could see Azrael's true form, your mind wouldn't be able to process it. It would be too much, too vast, too overwhelming. Because Azrael is not shaped like a human. He's not shaped like anything we have words for. Let me try to describe it. According to Islamic texts, Azrael has 4 faces, not 4 heads. 4 faces, each one looking in a different direction. North, south, east, west. He sees everything, all at once. There's no blind spot, no place to hide. No matter where you are on earth, one of Azrael's faces is looking toward you. But that's just the beginning. Azrael is also said to have 4,000 wings. 4,000. Not 2, not a dozen. 4,000 wings stretching across space, across realms, across realities. And here's the eerie part. Not all of those wings are the same. Some of the wings are soft, gentle, made of light and grace. These are the wings he uses for the righteous. When he comes to collect a soul that lived with love and faith, he wraps them in these wings. It feels like being held, like being carried home. But the other wings, they're different. They're made of iron, sharp hooks, heavy chains, burning metal. These wings are for souls that are weighed down with sin, with cruelty, with unrepentant evil. And when those wings unfold, there's no comfort. Only the cold, hard truth of what that soul has become. Now imagine this. Imagine being an angel who carries both mercy and judgment inside the same body. Imagine holding both peace and punishment in your hands at the same time. That's Azrael. But we're not done yet, because the descriptions go even further. Some scholars say that Azrael has 70,000 feet, or limbs, or perhaps tendrils of being that stretch across existence, each one capable of reaching a soul, each one connected to the task. And here's the detail that makes your skin crawl. Azrael's entire body is covered with eyes and tongues, millions of them, billions maybe. Each eye represents a living soul on earth. Each tongue represents a voice, a life, a person. And here's the part that should make you stop and think. When someone dies, one of those eyes closes. One of those tongues goes silent. It vanishes from Azrael's form. That means Azrael's body is constantly changing, constantly shifting, eyes opening and closing, tongues appearing and disappearing. Right now, as you listen to this, Azrael's form is different than it was 5 minutes ago, because people have died and people have been born. He is a living reflection of humanity's existence. If you could somehow see him in his true form, you would see yourself, your eye, your tongue. Somewhere on his infinite body, you are represented, and one day your eye will close, your tongue will vanish, and Azrael will come for you. Does that thought terrify you, or does it make you feel connected, like you're part of something larger? Let me know in the comments, because I think this might be one of the most powerful ideas we've touched on so far. Now, here's another detail that shows just how beyond comprehension Azrael truly is. According to some narrations, the entire earth appears to Azrael as nothing more than a small plate in his hand. Some say it looks like a bowl. Others say it's as tiny as a coin. Distance doesn't exist for him. Borders don't matter. Mountains, oceans, cities, all of it is within his reach at every single moment. You could be standing at the top of the tallest mountain or hiding in the deepest cave. It makes no difference. To Azrael, you're right there, right in front of him, always. And when your name fades from the scroll, he doesn't need to travel. He doesn't need to search. He's already there. Some traditions go even further. They say that Azrael is larger than the bearers of the throne. These are the mightiest angels in existence, so large that their size can't even be measured in human terms. Their only job is to hold up the throne of God. And yet, Azrael is bigger, not because he's stronger in battle, not because he's more important in rank, but because his task covers every living thing, every breath, every heartbeat, every ending. That's why even Michael, the greatest warrior in heaven, gives him space. Because when Azrael moves, creation itself holds its breath. If you're still with me, give this video a thumbs up, because what's coming next is one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking parts of this entire story. We're going to talk about the two faces of Azrael, the one that brings peace and the one that brings terror. Chapter 6. Two Faces of the Same Angel. Here's something most people don't understand about Azrael. He doesn't appear the same to everyone. In fact, how Azrael looks when he comes for you depends entirely on how you lived your life. Let that sink in for a moment. The same angel, the same being, but two completely different experiences. For some, Azrael is the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. His presence is warm, gentle, filled with light. When he arrives, there's no fear, only peace, a sense of finally going home. For others, Azrael is the most terrifying thing imaginable. His form is dark, cold, overwhelming. His arrival brings panic, dread, and the crushing weight of regret. Same angel, different experience. Why? Because Azrael is a mirror. He reflects back to you the truth of your soul. If your soul is at peace, he appears as peace. If your soul is in turmoil, he appears as turmoil. This is one of the most profound ideas in all of Sufi mysticism. The belief that death is not something outside of you, it's something inside you. And when Azrael comes, he simply reveals what was already there. Let me give you an example. Imagine a person who lived their life with kindness. They helped others. They forgave. They tried, even when it was hard, to do the right thing. Sure, they made mistakes. Everyone does. But their heart was in the right place. When Azrael comes to that person, he doesn't need to force anything. The soul is ready. It's been ready. Maybe it doesn't even realize it yet. But when Azrael appears, the soul recognizes him, not as a stranger, as a guide. In some traditions, it's said that Azrael will sit beside that person. He'll give them a moment, maybe a few minutes, maybe longer. He'll let them feel the transition, let them say a silent goodbye to their life, their body, their memories. And then, gently, he'll reach out, and the soul will come willingly, easily, like a breath leaving the body. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't tear, it simply releases. And in that moment, the person feels something they've never felt before. Freedom, lightness, a sense of coming home to a place they've always known but never visited. That's one side of Azrael. But there's another side. Imagine someone who lived their life with cruelty, who hurt others without remorse, who chose selfishness over compassion, violence over peace, lies over truth. When Azrael comes to that person, everything is different. The soul doesn't want to leave. It clings to the body with everything it has, because deep down, it knows what's waiting on the other side. And Azrael, he doesn't sit gently. He doesn't wait. According to some descriptions, The soul of a sinner is ripped from the body like thorns being pulled through wet wool. It tears, it resists, it screams, though no one can hear it. And the form Azrael takes in those moments is not gentle. It's heavy, dark, filled with the weight of judgment. This isn't cruelty, it's truth. The person spent their life building walls around their soul, filling it with fear, anger, and pain. And now, at the end, those walls are collapsing, and there's nowhere left to hide. Azrael doesn't punish, he just reveals. But here's the part that's easy to miss. Even in those terrifying moments, Azrael is still fulfilling his role. He's still doing what needs to be done, because without that moment of truth, the soul would never move forward. It would stay trapped, clinging to a body that's no longer alive, unable to face what comes next. Azrael forces the transition, not out of hate, but because it's necessary, and maybe, just maybe, even that is a kind of mercy. Now, there's a third possibility, and it's the one that I think most of us fall into. What about the people who are somewhere in between? Not saints, not sinners, just people, trying their best, failing sometimes, succeeding other times. What does Azrael look like to them? The texts don't give a clear answer, but I imagine it's something in between. Maybe Azrael appears as a calm presence, not overwhelming, not terrifying, just certain. And maybe the soul hesitates, not because it's evil, but because it's human, because leaving is hard, even when you know it's time. And maybe, in those moments, Azrael waits, just a little, not forever, but long enough for the soul to take one last look, one last breath, one last thought, and then, gently but firmly, he guides the soul forward. If you're wondering which version of Azrael you'll meet one day, maybe the better question is this: which version are you creating right now? Because the way you live shapes the way you'll leave. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Azrael's dual nature is fair? Should everyone see the same version of him, no matter how they lived? And if this story is making you think, go ahead and share it with someone, because these are the kinds of conversations we don't have enough of. Now, let's talk about something even more chilling: the fear that even the angels feel when Azrael is near. Chapter 7. When Angels Fear. We've been talking a lot about humans, about how Azrael appears to us, how he collects our souls, how he reflects the truth of who we are. But what about the angels? Because here's the thing: Azrael's power doesn't just apply to humans, it applies to everyone, everything, even the angels themselves. And that's why even the mightiest beings in heaven give him space. Let me explain. In the heavenly realms, there's a hierarchy. Some angels are messengers, some are warriors, some are guardians. And at the top, you have the archangels: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Israfil. These beings are incredibly powerful. They've existed since the dawn of creation. They've stood in the presence of God. They've carried out missions that shaped the entire universe. But even they know one thing: when Azrael appears, you step aside. Not because Azrael is their enemy, not because he's cruel or violent, but because his presence means something absolute. It means the end. And angels, for all their power, are not immune to endings. There are stories, ancient and mostly forgotten, that talk about angels who were taken by Azrael, not because they rebelled, not because they sinned, but because their time, their purpose, had come to an end. Some traditions say that certain angels are created for specific tasks. When that task is complete, they're no longer needed. And so, Azrael comes, even for them. Imagine being an angel. Imagine existing for thousands, maybe millions of years. Imagine believing you're eternal, untouchable. And then one day, Azrael appears, and you realize you're not. That's the fear, not fear of pain, but fear of the unknown. Fear of the end, fear of the one thing you thought would never apply to you. And if angels can feel that fear, how much more do we? There's a specific story that captures this perfectly. According to Islamic tradition, when God first created death, he wanted to show it to the angels, not to scare them, but to help them understand what it was. So God manifested death as a being, a creature, a form, and he placed it before the angels. Every single angel who looked at death fainted. Not for a moment, for 1,000 years. Even the greatest among them couldn't withstand the sight of it. That's how overwhelming death is, not as a concept, but as a reality. And Azrael, he's the one who was chosen to carry it, to wield it, to become its face. Think about that. Think about what it means to hold something so powerful that even your fellow angels can't look at it without collapsing. That's not a gift, that's a burden, and Azrael carries it every single day. But here's what makes this even more interesting. Despite his power, despite his role, Azrael never rebelled. Lucifer, one of the most beautiful and intelligent angels ever created, couldn't handle his role. He wanted more. He questioned. He challenged. And eventually, he fell. But Azrael, he never wavered. Why? Maybe it's because Azrael understands something Lucifer never did. That power isn't about control. It's about service. Azrael doesn't take souls because he wants to. He takes them because it's necessary. Because without death, life has no shape, no meaning, no urgency. And maybe, in some strange way, Azrael loves humanity more than any other angel, because he's the one who sees us at our most vulnerable, our final moment, the moment when all pretense falls away and we're just ourselves. He sees us as we truly are, and he still does his job, with care, with precision, with respect. That's why the other angels fear him, not because he's cruel, but because he's devoted. And devotion, true devotion, is the most powerful force in existence. If you've made it this far, thank you. Seriously, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're diving even deeper from here. Now let's talk about Azrael's relationships with the other archangels, because this is where the story gets really personal. Chapter 8: The Relationship with Other Archangels. Angels don't have friendships the way humans do. They don't laugh over meals. They don't share stories. They don't comfort each other after a hard day. but they do have relationships, bonds, understandings, and Azrael's relationship with the other archangels is one of the most fascinating and unexplored parts of his story. Let's start with Michael. Michael is the warrior, the protector, the one who fights on the front lines of every spiritual battle. He's bold, strong, filled with righteous fury when needed. But here's the thing. Michael fights to protect life. That's his entire purpose. And Azrael ends life. So how do they coexist? Some traditions suggest that Michael respects Azrael, but from a distance. They serve the same God, but their missions are opposite. Michael saves, Azrael takes. Imagine being Michael. Imagine spending centuries protecting a soul, guiding them, helping them survive dangers and temptations. And then, after all that work, Azrael arrives, and in one moment, it's over. Does Michael ever feel frustrated? Does he ever wish he could stop Azrael, just once? The texts don't say, but I imagine there's a tension there, not hatred, but a kind of sadness, because Michael knows, deep down, that no matter how well he protects someone, Azrael will eventually come, and there's nothing Michael can do about it. Now let's talk about Gabriel. Gabriel is the messenger, the one who brings news from God to prophets, to Mary, to Muhammad. His voice has shaped human history, but messages are about beginnings, announcements, new chapters. Azrael is about endings, and yet there's a connection between them, because every great story that Gabriel announces, every birth, every prophecy, every mission, eventually leads to Azrael. Gabriel tells you your purpose. Azrael collects you when it's fulfilled. In some mystical writings, there's a beautiful idea that Gabriel and Azrael are two halves of the same process. Gabriel opens the door, Azrael closes it. One brings the message, the other brings the silence. And maybe, just maybe, they understand each other better than any of the other angels do, because they both deal with moments that change everything. Then there's Israfil. Israfil is the angel who will blow the trumpet at the end of time. When he sounds that horn, the entire universe will collapse. Every soul will be judged. Everything will end. And here's the eerie part. After Israfil blows the trumpet, the last beings to die will be the angels themselves, and Azrael will be one of them. In fact, according to some narrations, Azrael will be the second to last angel to die. Only Israfil will outlive him. So Israfil and Azrael share something unique. They both know what the end looks like, not just for individuals, but for everything. I imagine they have a kind of quiet understanding, a respect born from knowing that their tasks are the heaviest, the most final, and maybe, in the moments before the universe ends, they'll look at each other. Two ancient beings who have served faithfully since the beginning. And maybe they'll nod, because they did their job, all the way to the very end. But here's the angel we haven't talked about yet. The one whose relationship with Azrael is the most complicated. Lucifer. Before Lucifer fell, he was one of the greatest angels in heaven. Some say he was the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the closest to God. And Lucifer knew about Azrael. He knew what Azrael's role was. But here's the question. Did Lucifer fear him? Some scholars believe that part of Lucifer's rebellion was rooted in his refusal to accept death. Not his own death, necessarily, but the idea of death itself. Lucifer wanted to be eternal, unchanging, beyond consequence. And Azrael represented the one thing Lucifer couldn't escape: the reality that everything, even the greatest among them, could end. So maybe Lucifer didn't just rebel against God. Maybe he rebelled against the idea of Azrael, against the concept that even he, the morning star, could be subject to an ending. And maybe that's why, even now, Lucifer avoids Azrael. Because Azrael is the one truth Lucifer can't twist, can't negotiate with, can't charm or deceive. When Azrael comes, the story ends. No arguments, no second chances. And for someone like Lucifer, who built an entire existence on pride and refusal, that's the ultimate defeat. If you're fascinated by these relationships, drop a comment. Tell me which angel's dynamic with Azrael interests you most. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because we're about to explore the most personal part of this story, the humans who actually met Azrael and lived to tell about it. Well, sort of. Chapter 9. Stories of those who met him. Most people never see Azrael coming. One moment they're alive, the next they're gone. And in between, Azrael does his work so quickly, so quietly, that there's no time to process it. But there are a very few, who were given a different experience. People who saw Azrael before their time, who spoke to him, who were given a choice, or at least a moment of understanding. These stories are rare, and they're powerful. Let's start with one of the most famous, King Solomon. Solomon was known as the wisest man who ever lived. He could speak to animals. He commanded jinn. He built a temple that became one of the wonders of the ancient world. But even Solomon couldn't escape Azrael. According to legend, Solomon was standing in his palace one day, overseeing the construction of the great temple, when he saw a figure approaching. The figure was calm, silent, and Solomon, with all his wisdom, immediately knew who it was. Azrael. Solomon asked, "Have you come for me?" And Azrael replied, "Not yet, but soon." Solomon didn't panic. He didn't beg. Instead, he asked a favor. "Let me finish the temple first," Solomon said. "Let me complete this one last thing." Azrael agreed. So Solomon continued his work. Days passed, weeks, months, and finally, the temple was complete. But here's the twist. When Azrael finally came to collect Solomon's soul, Solomon didn't fall. He didn't collapse. Instead, he remained standing, leaning on his staff, looking out over the temple he had built. And he stayed that way for weeks, maybe even months. The workers kept building. The jinn kept laboring. Because as long as Solomon was standing, they assumed he was still alive, still watching. But he wasn't. His soul was already gone, taken by Azrael, and his body remained upright, a silent guardian over his final creation. It wasn't until a small worm ate through his staff that Solomon's body finally fell. And only then did everyone realize he had been dead the entire time. Why did Azrael allow this? Why let Solomon remain standing? Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe it was a gift to a man who had served faithfully his entire life. Or maybe it was a reminder that even in death, purpose can remain. Now let's talk about the Prophet Muhammad. In Islamic tradition, it's said that Azrael appeared to the Prophet near the end of his life. But Azrael didn't come to take him by force. He came to offer a choice. "You may live longer if you wish," Azrael said, "or you may come with me now to be with your Lord." Muhammad, despite being in pain, despite the difficulty of his final days, chose to go. Not because he wanted to escape life, but because he was ready, because he had completed his mission, and because he trusted what was on the other side. And Azrael, according to the narration, was gentle with him. There was no struggle, no fear, just a peaceful transition. This story is important because it shows something we've been circling around this whole time. Azrael is not your enemy. He's the one who helps you cross the river when it's time. And for those who are ready, who have lived with purpose and faith, that crossing is not something to fear. It's something to embrace. But not everyone gets that choice. There's another story, darker, about a man who tried to escape Azrael. In an ancient tale, a wealthy merchant was walking through a marketplace when he saw a figure in the crowd. The figure looked directly at him, and the merchant's blood ran cold. He knew somehow that it was Azrael. Terrified, the merchant ran. He bought the fastest horse he could find and rode for days, all the way to a distant city, thinking he had escaped. But when he arrived, exhausted and relieved, he saw the same figure waiting for him. Azrael. "Why did you look at me like that in the marketplace?" the merchant asked. "Were you surprised to see me?" "I wasn't surprised," Azrael replied. "I was simply puzzled, because I was told to take your soul here, in this city, and I wondered how you would make the journey in time." The merchant had run straight into his own destiny. This story isn't about cruelty, it's about inevitability. No matter where you go, no matter how fast you run, when your name fades from the scroll, Azrael will be there. Not because he's chasing you, but because that's where your story ends. And maybe there's comfort in that. Because it means you don't have to spend your life running. You don't have to live in fear. You just have to live fully, honestly, with purpose. And when the time comes, Azrael will find you. If these stories are hitting you in a certain way, leave a comment. Tell me which one resonated most. And if you're finding value in this deep dive, smash that like button. It helps more than you know. Now, let's talk about one of the most mysterious and misunderstood parts of Azrael's story: the difference between Azrael and death itself. Chapter 10. Death itself, the being versus the angel. Here's a question that might seem strange at first. Is Azrael the same thing as death, or are they separate? Most people assume they're the same. Azrael is the angel of death, so he must be death, right? Not exactly. In many ancient traditions, death is not just a concept, it's a being, a creation, something God made, just like he made the angels, the earth, and humanity. And Azrael, he's the one who was given authority over that being. Let me explain. According to some Islamic narrations, when God created death, He formed it as an actual entity. It had presence, weight, power, and when the angels first saw it, they were overwhelmed. We talked about this earlier. Every angel who looked at death fainted for 1,000 years. But here's the key detail. Death was too powerful for any angel to control on their own. So God gave Azrael something unique, not just the task of taking souls, but the authority to command death itself. In this interpretation, Azrael doesn't kill, death kills. Azrael just directs it, guides it, tells it where to go and when to strike. It's a subtle but important distinction. Think of it this way. Death is the sword. Azrael is the hand that wields it. And because Azrael was given this authority, he became the face of death, the one people see, the one people fear. But the actual force behind it, that's something even more primal, something even Azrael himself must respect. Now here's where it gets really interesting. At the end of time, according to Islamic eschatology, something incredible will happen. After the Day of Judgment, after every soul has been sorted into paradise or hell, after the universe has been reshaped, one final event will take place. God will call for death itself. And death, that powerful, overwhelming being that has claimed billions of lives, will appear. Some traditions say it will take the form of a ram. Others say it will appear as a creature beyond description, and God will place it between paradise and hell, where everyone can see it. And then, in front of all creation, God will slaughter death. In that moment, death will die, and with it, the very concept of ending will cease to exist. From that point on, those in paradise will live forever, with no fear of losing it, and those in hell will remain forever, with no hope of escape. Eternity will truly begin. But here's the question: what happens to Azrael? Because if death dies, what is Azrael's purpose? Some scholars believe that Azrael will die too, that his role will be complete, and he'll be released from his duty. Others believe that Azrael will remain, but transformed. No longer the angel of death, but something else. Perhaps a guardian, perhaps a witness. No one knows for sure, but there's something deeply poignant about the idea that Azrael, who has ended so many stories, will one day have his own story ended. That the one who collected every soul will eventually be collected himself. And maybe, in that final moment, Azrael will finally rest, because his burden, the heaviest burden any angel ever carried, will be lifted, and he'll be free. If you've made it this far, you're part of a small group of people who've truly explored this story to its depths. Thank you for being here. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're almost at the end, and I want to leave you with something powerful. Let's talk about where Azrael is today, and what his story means for us. Chapter 11. The Day Death Will Die. Imagine a world where death no longer exists. Not because people stop dying, but because death itself, the concept, the force, the being, is destroyed. That's what's coming. According to Islamic tradition, anyway. We've talked about Azrael's beginning, his purpose, his power. But now, let's talk about his end. Because yes, even the angel of death has an ending. After the trumpet sounds, after the dead are raised, after the judgment is complete, God will bring forth death in a form that all can see. It will be placed between paradise and hell, a boundary, a reminder of what once was. And then, God will command that death be slain. In that moment, every soul will understand. This is it. There are no more second chances, no more endings, no more goodbyes. What you have is what you'll have forever. For the people of paradise, this is the greatest news imaginable. No more fear. No more loss. No more wondering if it will ever end. It won't. But for the people of hell, it's the opposite. No more hope. No more thinking. Maybe one day this will stop. It won't. And Azrael, according to some narrations, he will be among the last angels to die. The angel of death will himself taste death. There's something almost poetic about that. The one who has taken so many souls will finally have his own soul taken. But by whom? Some say by God directly. Others say by Israfil, the angel of the trumpet. But most traditions suggest that Azrael's end will be unique, quiet, respectful, because after all he's done, after all the souls he's guided, after all the burdens he's carried, Azrael deserves a peaceful end. And maybe, just maybe, when Azrael's soul is taken, he'll finally understand what it felt like for everyone he ever came for. The fear, the relief, the transition. And maybe, in that moment, he'll feel something he's never felt before. Peace. Now let's bring this back to us. Because this story isn't just about an ancient angel. It's about you and me and everyone listening. Azrael's story is a mirror. It asks us to look at our own lives and ask, am I ready? Not ready to die, necessarily, but ready to live in a way that means something. Because here's the truth. Azrael is coming. For all of us. That's not a threat. It's just reality. The question is, when he arrives, what will he find? Will he find a soul at peace? A life well lived? Moments of kindness, love, courage, and growth? Or will he find a soul full of regret? A life spent chasing things that didn't matter? Moments of cruelty, selfishness, and fear. The choice is yours, right now, today. Azrael doesn't judge, he just reveals. So live in a way that when he comes, you're ready. Not because you're perfect, but because you tried. And maybe, just maybe, when Azrael appears, you'll see him not as a figure of fear, but as a friend, someone who's been with you all along, waiting patiently for the moment when your story in this world ends and your story in the next begins. If this message resonates with you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because we all need reminders like this. And if you want to keep exploring these deep, meaningful stories, subscribe to the channel. We've got so much more to uncover together. Now, for the final chapter, let's talk about Azrael in our world today. Chapter 12. Azrael in our world today. Azrael is not just a figure from ancient texts. He's alive in our culture, our art, our conversations. Even if people don't know his name, they know his presence. Every story about death, every poem about endings, every song about saying goodbye carries a piece of Azrael's essence. He's the Grim Reaper in Western culture, the silent figure in black, holding a scythe, walking through the fog. He's the psychopomp in mythology, the guide who leads souls across the river. He's the shadow at the edge of every life, reminding us that time is precious. In literature, Azrael appears again and again, sometimes by name, sometimes in disguise. The poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote about him as a gentle figure, collecting flowers, souls, for God's garden. Leigh Hunt described him as a somber reaper, walking quietly among the living. Even in modern times, Azrael shows up. In comics, in movies, in TV shows. Sometimes he's portrayed as evil, a villain to be defeated. But more often, in stories that understand him, he's shown as neutral, neither good nor evil, just necessary. Because that's what Azrael is, necessary. Without him, there would be no end, and without an end, nothing would have meaning. We treasure moments because they don't last forever. We hold people close because we know one day we won't be able to. Azrael is the reason we value life, and maybe that's his greatest gift. Not the taking of souls, but the reminder that every breath, every smile, every conversation matters, because one day it will be the last one. So here's my final question for you. How does knowing about Azrael change the way you see your life? Does it scare you? Or does it motivate you? Does it make you want to run? Or does it make you want to live more fully? Let me know in the comments, because I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And if this video moved you, if it made you think, if it gave you a new perspective, do me a favor, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear this message. Because Azrael's story isn't just about death, it's about life. About living with intention, about understanding that every moment is a gift. And when the day finally comes, when Azrael appears at your side, you'll be ready. Not because you're perfect, but because you lived, truly lived. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for sticking with this story all the way to the end. If you want more deep dives like this, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you never miss a new video. And until next time, keep your mind open, keep your heart full, and remember, every ending is also a beginning. See you in the next one.